As a beginner and having no prior experience in striking, in kicking, in grappling, in wrestling, or any combat disciplines, and you want to begin to learn, where should you start? And I'm going to primarily focus on striking, but there's going to be a lot of overlap to other disciplines as well. So when you are beginning to learn how to strike, what you should start with is the fundamentals. And I talk and I preach a lot about the fundamentals, because the fundamentals are your everything. Having good fundamentals will save you in a fight. Having good fundamentals will build a very strong foundation and the groundwork for everything else. And the fundamentals are never flashy, and they usually don't make the highlights. You know, you see a lot of highlights because the finish is a flashy spinning back elbow, or a spinning kick, or a kick off the cage that knocks somebody out. But the fundamentals, the proper and the core fundamentals, you know, you get to see the highlights, but you get to see the finish. And the fundamentals usually help the highlight happen. So a lot of those highlights are usually caused by a very strong foundation and the proper fundamentals executed in order to lead to a finish and to that highlight. So the fundamentals are going to be your everything. It's something that you begin with, and then you continue drilling your fundamental strikes for the rest of your life. And the fundamental 4 punches, and since we're just focused on striking and punches only for this video, the fundamental 4 punches are going to be the ones that you want to focus on are your jab, your cross, your lead hook, and your rear uppercut. These 4 are the 4 punches that you have to start and you need to focus on first. There are a lot of other punches, of course, and the most important part about focusing these 4 punches, you want to start focusing them throwing to the head. When you begin to switch levels and go to the body, that adds another element and another transition to it, and you don't want to incorporate that yet as a beginner. You want to avoid drilling and learning going to the body just yet, because you need to focus on the few, and going to the head, there's a lot less of things to keep in mind and track of when you execute into the head. And then once you become a little more proficient with these 4, you go to the body, and then you can include other strikes. Now, these 4 punches, like I said, there's a lot more. So you have head to jab to the head, cross to the head, lead hook to the head, and the rear uppercut to the head. Now, there are other punches, of course, where you go jab to the body, cross to the body. You have your lead hook to the body, right hook to the body, as well as the uppercut to the body and the lead uppercut to the head. So a lot of variations can be thrown afterwards, and that's not even including, you know, the elbows, or being able to work in clinch. And even just those few things added on top, there's already a lot. And as a beginner, you're going to be overwhelmed. You'll never be more overwhelmed when you are learning how to fight. And especially when you do an MMA, because MMA has so many different disciplines that are combined into one. You have your punching, you have your boxing, Muay Thai, kickboxing, wrestling, and then you have your BJJ, you have your grappling. So there's a lot of disciplines in one aspect of a combat sport, MMA. So there's a lot of overwhelm that you're going to experience. And to keep track of all these different elements is very difficult for a beginner. So by being able to isolate and focus on few things in order for you to drill them. And this is why a lot of fighters, they when they notice that they have a hole in their game, or they want to make something better, like let's say a wrestler comes into MMA sport and their boxing is lacking, they will often go to a boxing gym, or they will work with a boxing coach, or they just will dedicate a lot of their time to strictly boxing, and then they will avoid, they will not do other aspects like kicking, or they'll tone down on the wrestling aspect or BJJ or the grappling, because they just want to focus all of their time on striking. And that's a good it's a good way to sharpen one element of your fighting. All these different disciplines, you just focus on one. So for you as a striker, you start off with these 4 punches and you don't do anything else, because you would want to focus and master the few rather than having 10 different punches that you have to drill, or 10 different combinations that you have to drill. That's a lot, and as a beginner you're going to make a lot of mistakes if you do a lot of different combinations and a lot of different punches that you're trying to master and get better at. So less is more. A lot of beginners can have a lot of success if they just stick with these 4 punches. These 4 punches, individual punches, you drill them for proper mechanics and how to throw them properly with speed, with power, so you have a good protection and you do everything correctly. But also you begin to chain them together, and that's where you can have a lot of success with just a few. The combinations, just taking these 4 punches, are essentially limitless. But you need to also do less. So you only have 4 combinations that you start with. Your jab cross, and then your 3-punch combo, jab cross hook, and then jab cross hook rear uppercut. These 4 combinations are going to be enough to start with. So you have your 4 punches and you have your 4 combinations, and then you need to drill them, and only them, for a while, in order for you to start getting the proper body mechanics, the speed and the power that you need to execute them properly. You also see this in a lot of fights and a lot of boxing matches. When beginners begin, when they're introduced to actually stepping into a ring and sparring, and then when you have a match, you just see the basics. You see the jab, you see the jab cross, you see the jab cross hook, you see jab cross hook uppercut. You can also then start combining other punches, just a 2-punch combo. You have your cross hook, or you have your jab rear uppercut. So there's a lot of variety in just the 4 punches, and then start chaining them together in different combinations. But as a beginner, again, the best way to start with no experience is you do less. And you start with strikes. You start with these 4 strikes: the jab, the cross, the lead hook, and the rear uppercut, and you focus only to the head. You minimize introducing footwork. Footwork also, just like going to the body, footwork introduces a whole new other element that is often separated and drilled solo. So you want to avoid footwork at first, or introducing a lot of complex footwork, pivots, side steps. There is some that you want to introduce a little bit, of course, because you're going to be going from no range into punching range or kicking range. So you have to, of course, step into striking range and then move out. So there's a little bit that you have to introduce. But in terms of incorporating, a lot of footwork that you see other people do, the pivots, the shuffle in and out, the lateral movement, you want to avoid that at the start, because you just want to focus on the combinations, the punches, and the very basic moving in and out. And then also you want to avoid drilling a lot of head movement. You want to introduce a little bit, but then again, head movement is it's an advanced level of a boxer. When they begin to incorporate footwork, head movement, and strikes, that's a professional, and they begin to combine all those together. And if you start throwing all this together and you say, you want to start drilling all these different aspects just in boxing alone, and just in striking punches only, where you have your 4 punches, and then you say you want to do footwork, and then you want to do head movement at the same time, that's a lot. And it's very difficult to show a beginner all of these things together and have them executed properly. So the best way for a complete beginner is to isolate. You isolate, and then you drill, and then you focus on certain aspects. And then once you begin to get the proper body mechanics and the speed and the power down with just the isolation of single strikes and those combinations, then you begin to introduce the footwork. Then you begin to introduce the body shots, and then the head movement, and then you begin to drill and combine all of them together. So starting off, focus on just the strikes, very basic movement in and out. These 4 strikes going to the head, the jab, the cross, the lead hook, and the uppercut. Drill them, focus on them, master them as best as you can, do the 4 combinations, drill those, and of course I cover all of that in the Fundamental 4 course, so I break everything down for you. So start with that, start with the fundamentals and the basics, because those is what is going to save you when you're in trouble. The fundamentals save you from getting knocked out, or they minimize the amount of damage you could receive, because you can always go back to fundamentals, especially when you're tired. You always go back to the essentials. And when you put in your combinations together in order to land a successful shot, the basics, the fundamentals, the essentials is what's going to get you that one shot that you actually begin to land. And with these 4 punches, there's a lot of variety that you can implement, especially when you start throwing angled shots. You have your straight shots, and those are usually, if that's all you throw, easy to see. But then when you start introducing your hook and uppercut, you have a lot of variety and a lot of different angles you can throw in order to land. So start with these 4 strikes, 4 combinations, and isolate before you introduce all other advanced mechanics of boxing and eventually fighting.